Hi, this is Rabbi Jeremy Fenster for Talmud Brilliant. Let me talk to you about these videos for a second. These videos are going to be talking about our mind's decision-making process. And I will show you that the decision-making process of the Talmud is very similar to our own decision-making process. So now, the question is, that's nice. Who are these videos for? Who is my intention? Who do I want to watch them? So, I'll tell you like this. I know there's many people who never had a chance to go to yeshivas. And they never learned Talmud learning inside. They were never instructed. They never showed how it was done. These videos are for them. People also don't have time to do it now, to go to yeshivas, to donate that, to give it that amount of time. There are people who went to yeshivas, were not successful, or they were and they forgot it. These videos are for them. There's people who have children and grandchildren who are now going to yeshivas, and the grandparents or the parents end up being cut out of the conversations when those kids come home, the Talmud discussions, because the parents and the grandparents never understood how it worked, never learned it inside, and that's a shame. These videos are for you. There are a lot of people who are already giving time to their learning and dedicated, things like Daf Yomi and other programs, but they want to get more out of their investment. They are already ready to move on, not only to learn by osmosis, or which is the normal way that the teachers, the rabbis, say over the shir, the piece of the Talmud, and somehow through back engineering, the student, the people are supposed to understand what happened there. We want to teach it from the top. We want to show you the instructions and how it does. Those people, these videos are for you. And of course, as you'll see, for people who are just beginning, kids who are beginning, or teenagers who are beginning and want to strengthen their learning, these videos are for you. Now let's get on to today's lesson. But before I do that, review. We have to review to be able to kind of remember where we are. We said in the previous video, and I'm going to repeat many times, a decision-making process has three phases. The first phase is getting a full understanding of some sentence or idea that was communicated. The second step is to take that idea or that sentence and to see if it has extensions, implications, ramifications. And the third step is now we have to decide. We have to take the original idea or sentence or its ramifications or implications, extensions, and we have to decide about whether to accept them or reject them. That's the third step. That's what it's all about, deciding. Okay, now that we got that, I want to zoom in to the first phase. The first phase, which is getting a full understanding of a sentence or an idea. Now that in turn, stay with me, itself has three elements. Seems to be things come in threes. Those elements are understanding the subject matter of a sentence or an idea. The language, understanding the language of a sentence or an idea. And why is that sentence or an idea reasonable? Those are the three elements, all in that first phase of the decision-making process, which is talked about full understanding. These three elements, subject matter, language, and reasonable, that's what's called getting a full understanding. One last thing before we go to our example. All of those three, in full understanding, you want to, and this is our guiding light, you want to get to understand it according to what the communicator, whether he wrote it in a book or whatever, or he spoke it to you, you want to get it clear what he meant. Not to input your ideas already and in your interpretation of it, but to get it clear. That's our guiding light. You got to get it as intended. Sounds simple, but it needs work. And today's lesson is going to be about step number 2, which is going to be about language. To understand the language that was used, if there are any words not understood, if there are extra words, and that's today's lesson. Before we actually go to the piece inside the Talmud, I'd like to give you a little introduction to it. So imagine a scene like this. You have a father standing there talking to his friend. another father. And with the first father who's doing the talking, he has his two sons, Jonathan and Daniel. They're there with him. And he talks to his friend, the other father, and he says, wow, my son Jonathan, he is just so smart. Now, what actually flares, if you will, in the listener's mind? What he says is, that's interesting. That's interesting. He mentioned one son, and he didn't mention the other son. Interesting. It's a question in the mind. We're going to see a Gemara just like that. The Mishnah is going to express a specific idea which could have also been used more generally. And that's going to be the Gemara's interest. Because the Gemara is like, wow, that's interesting. Why was it said specifically? It could have been said more generally. So I want to show you that inside. So the Gemara we're going to look at, which is going to have that dynamic that I explained to you, where one thing is mentioned, the other thing is left out. Daniel is not spoken about in our example. So that's going to be a Gemara in Arvei Pesachim, in the Tractate of Pesachim, the 10th chapter, page 99, or Tzaditet, Amud Beis, the second folio. And it goes like this. Erev Pesach, Samach LeMincha, Lo Yochol Adam Ad Shetechshach. On Pesach Eve, the eve of the Pesach Seder, close to Mincha time, in the afternoon, a person should not eat until it gets dark. That's the Mishnah. On that, the Gemara says, My irya arvei psachim, afilu arvei shabbasos, v'yamim tovim nami. The Gemara asks, why did the Mishnah specify arvei psachim, the eve of the Pesach Seder? The same law is true that you can't eat from the afternoon till it gets dark. It's also true every Erev Shabbos and the eve of every holidays. The eve of Shabbos and the eve of holidays also. So this is what we want. I want you to become sensitive, aware to the sensitivity of the Gemara on the Mishnah. That even though it's simple and we do it quickly, there's a big gain in taking that moment and saying, interesting. What is the Gemara's interest? And the Gemara's interest is saying the language in the Mishnah, when it went specific, and it could have gone general, it says, wow, that's interesting. Why did it do that? Because it could have spoken more broadly about the eve of all of Shabbos and holidays, and not just about the eve of Erev Pesach. Let's going back to our case, the pre-example. When the father talks about the smartness of his son Jonathan and doesn't say anything about Daniel, the listener of that, the person who hears that communication, goes in his mind, that's interesting. He said about one, and why did he say about the other? Whatever the answer is going to be, that's what flares up in the mind of the listener, and that interests us. Because that's how our minds work. And how our minds work, that's the process the Gemara is going to use too. Okay, so that's today's example of a language issue, getting full understanding of the language. There was something insufficient there, and the Talmud looked into it. In the next video, I'm going to give another example of this. So that's it. Please like our videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel, go to our website. The link is down there on the bottom. And for more information, more videos like this, we're beginning to expand. You can also please give us your email address there, because we can send you more notifications and things like that. That's it. I'm Rabbi Jeremy Fenster for Talmud Brilliant, and keep your mind moving.